Okay, so tonight we're going to look at the works of Krishnamurti, some of his teachings about meditation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by reading some excerpts from one of his talks and then continue with other of his talks. So this is Kay talking. You know, we are never silent. Either we're having a dialogue with ourselves or with somebody else. The machinery of thought is incessantly active, projecting itself, what it should do, it must do, how it has been, endlessly chattering or conforming, accepting, comparing, judging, condemning, imitating, obeying. Knowing this, there are various forms of meditation which tell you how to control thought. But controlling thought is not meditation at all. Anybody can concentrate, from the schoolboy to the hired general preparing for war. And it is only a silent mind that can perceive, that can actually see, not a chattering mind, not a controlled mind, not a mind that is tortured, suppressed, nor yielding, indulging. It is only a very silent mind that can actually see. And then Krishnamurti goes on to say, meditation is one of the greatest arts of life, perhaps the greatest art, because in the understanding of meditation, there is love. And love is not the product of systems, of habits, of following a method. Love cannot be cultivated by thought. Love can perhaps come into being when there is complete silence. And the mind can only be silent when it understands the nature of its own movement as thought and feeling. So meditation can take place when you are sitting in a bus or walking in the woods full of light and shadows, or listening to the singing birds, or looking at the face of your wife or husband. Meditation is not something apart. It is the understanding of the totality of life, in which every form of fragmentation of life has ceased. When one has totally denied the psychological world which man has created for himself, and has denied the psychological structure of society of which we are, the greed, the envy, the brutality, the violence, the jealousies, the hatred, then when you totally deny, you have space and silence. And it is only such a mind that is the religious mind, not belonging to any organized propagandist religion. It is only such a mind that can see what is immeasurable, and such a mind is a light to itself. Now, I want to go to this book that I'm reading from the majority of the talk tonight, and it's Krishnamurti's book called On God. And I highly, highly recommend it. So I'm on page 87, but I'm going to just do excerpts of this essay. I'm not going to do every paragraph of it. So Krishnamurti here says, meditation is one of the most important things. But without knowing yourself, do what you will, and there cannot possibly be the state of meditation. I mean by self-knowing, knowing every thought, every mood, every word, every feeling, knowing the activity of your mind, not knowing the supreme self, the big self. There is no such thing. The higher self, the Atman, it's all still within the field of thought. Yes.
So just to be clear, by meditation, does he mean knowing the workings of your mind?
Yes, yes.
Well, because it's not clear. What does he mean by meditation? Some people think meditation means sitting.
No, but he told you, you can do it on a bus. You can meditate walking in the woods.
So it's watching.
It's observing
the workings of your mind.
That's one of the things.
The movement of thought.
Yes. So, but now he goes on and he says, just a minute. It is important to understand what this self-knowing is, just to be aware, without any choice of the me that has its source in a bundle of memories. So here he's talking about choiceless awareness. I hope this is very clear, because what we're going to go into presently demands a mind that is completely clear, capable of looking, of seeing, listening, without any movement of recognition. So that means without any movement of the past. So one must first be very clear, not confused. Clarity is essential. I mean by clarity, seeing things as they are, seeing the what is without any opinion, seeing the movement of your mind, observing it very closely, minutely, diligently, without any purpose, without any directive. Just to observe demands astonishing clarity. Otherwise, you can't observe. If you observe an ant moving about, doing all the activities it does, by coming to it with various biological facts about the ant, that knowledge prevents you from looking. So you begin to see immediately where knowledge is necessary and where knowledge becomes an impediment. The foundation for meditation is observation, clarity, and virtue. You must have observation, clarity, self-knowing, and because of that, virtue. Virtue is a thing that is flowering in goodness all the time. You might make a mistake, do ugly things, but they are finished. You are moving, are flowering in goodness because you are knowing yourself. So here he's not talking about virtue that's imposed on us from society, from our conditioning. It's something that he's saying here is coming naturally because you've done a lot of the work. You've done the work of observing, of having clarity, of understanding this need and this desire to experience things. So you're able to let go. You're not waiting for any experiences. You're not wanting any experiences. Virtue, flowering in goodness. So that means acting in life in a way that manifests a flowering in goodness. These are the foundations he's talking about. So let me go on. He says here, so now together we're going to meditate. Not deliberate meditation, because that does not exist. It is like leaving the window open and the air comes when it will, whatever the air brings, whatever the breeze is. But if you wait for the breezes to come because you have opened the window, they will never come. So it must be opened out of love, out of affection, out of freedom, not because you want something. And that is the state of beauty. That is the state of mind that sees and does not demand. To be aware is an extraordinary state of mind. To be aware of your surroundings, of the trees, the bird that is singing, the sunset behind you. To be aware of the faces, of the smiles. To be aware of the dirt on the road. To be aware of the beauty of the land, of a palm tree against the red sunset, the ripple of the water. Just to be aware choicelessly. Listen to the movement of your own thoughts. Do not control them. Do not shape them. Do not say, this is right and that is wrong. Just move with them. That is awareness in which there is no choice, no condemnation, no judgment, no comparison or interpretation, only mere observation. That makes your mind highly sensitive. In that state of awareness, there is attention, not control, not concentration. There is attention. That is, you are listening to the birds. You are seeing the sunset. You are seeing the stillness of the trees. You are hearing the cars go by. You are hearing the speaker. And you are attentive to the meaning of the words. You are attentive to your own thoughts and feelings and to the movement in that attention. Now, this attention, demands tremendous energy. Not the energy that you have gathered through practice, being celibate and all the rest of that stuff. That is all the energy of greed. I am talking of the energy of self-knowing. Because you have laid the right foundation, out of that comes the energy to be attentive, in which there is no sense of concentration. Concentration is exclusive. So if you concentrate, you merely resist and exclude. But a mind that is attentive can concentrate and not be exclusive. So out of this attention comes a brain that is quiet. The brain cells themselves are quiet. They are not made quiet, not disciplined, not enforced. not brutally conditioned, but because this whole attention has come into being naturally, spontaneously, without effort, easily. The brain cells are not perverted, not hardened, not brutalized. Unless the brain cells themselves are astonishingly sensitive, alert, vital, not hardened, not beaten, not overworked, not specialized in a particular department of knowledge. Unless they are extraordinarily sensitive, they cannot be quiet. So the brain must be quiet, but yet be sensitive to every reaction. Be aware of all the music, the noises, the birds, hearing these words, watching the sunset, but without any pressure, without any strain, without any influence. The brain must be very quiet, because without quietness, uninduced, not brought about artificially, there can be no clarity. And clarity can only come when there is space. You have space the moment the brain is absolutely quiet, but yet highly sensitive, not deadened. And that is why what you do all day is very important. The brain is brutalized by circumstances, by society, by your jobs, and by specialization. By your 30 or 40 years in an office, grinding away brutally. All that destroys the extraordinary sensitivity of the brain. And the brain must be quiet. From there, the whole mind, in which is included the brain, is capable of being completely still. That still mind is no longer seeking. It is not waiting for experience. It is not experiencing anything at all. So the mind then becomes completely still, without any form of pressure or compulsion. This stillness is not a thing produced by thought, because thought has ended. The whole machinery of thought has come to an end. Thought must end. Otherwise, thought will produce more images, more ideas, more illusions, more and more and more. Therefore, you have to understand this whole machinery of thought, not how to stop thinking. If you understand the whole machinery of thought, which is the response of memory, association, and recognition, naming, comparing, judging, if you understand it, naturally it comes to an end. When the mind is completely still, then out of that stillness, in that stillness, there is quite a different movement. That movement is not a movement created by thought, by society, by what you have read or not read. That movement is not of time. I'm going to repeat that. That movement is not of time, of experience, because that movement has no experience. To a still mind, there is no experience. A light that is burning brightly, that is strong, does not demand anything more. It is a light to itself. That movement is not a movement in any direction, because direction implies time. That movement has no cause, because anything that has a cause produces an effect, and that effect becomes the cause, and so on. An endless chain of causation and effect. So there is no effort, no cause, no motive, no sense of experiencing at all, because the mind is completely still, naturally still, because you've laid the foundation. It is directly related to life. It is not divorced from everyday living. If the mind has gone that far, that movement is creation. Then there is no anxiety to express, because a mind that is in a state of creation may express or may not express. The state of mind that is in that complete silence, it will move. It has its own movement into the unknown, into that which is unnameable. So the meditation that you do is not the meditation of which we are talking. This meditation is from the everlasting to the everlasting, because you have laid the foundation not on time, but on reality. So, any questions, any comments? No questions?
Well, yeah, I think appreciating silence, whether it's our own inner silence or the silence around us, is not only difficult, or not difficult, but it's just not something we generally attend to. And I was reminding, as you were reading that, as we go for walks each morning, and we've had some beautiful days of late where there was bright sunshine, a decent temperature, but most important of all, there was absolutely no wind. And we were walking on some of the most beautiful streets in the neighborhood, where there are beautiful, beautiful trees and some rolling slopes. And we remarked to one another, and it must have been a weekend, because there were no gardeners out, no leaf blowers. And the silence was just so rich and full. And, you know, you could just begin to taste an appreciation for the deepness of it and the peace inside it. A deep silence. And it's rare that you get it here, because there's generally so much background noise, either inside ourselves or around ourselves. But when you get an opportunity to experience that silence, you see how rare and precious a commodity it is.
Now, of course, the silence that I just read from him, he's talking about the inner silence, being psychologically silent. because that mind is always chattering and chattering. And to be able, he says, to begin to be choicelessly aware of the movement of all that chatter. And the movement of that chatter is always in time. I mean, it's based on thought, but it's always in time. You'll notice you're either thinking, actually, it has to do with thinking about the past or projecting into the future. And so when you're thinking about the past, all the past stuff comes up, all the images, all the worries, the fears, the hurts, the joys, the pleasures. And we tend to meet that in the now. So we're never really fully in the now, because we're always meeting the now with all the images, the experiences, the memories of the past. So we're never fully in the now. And so we're really not silent. Psychologically, inwardly. And this is what he's encouraging. This is what he's saying true meditation is. Being choicelessly aware of that movement of thought and time in the mind.
I can identify with what you're saying about that stillness and that silence. Sometimes I take walks along Peconic Bay, my neighborhood, and you know, as I approach an understanding of this stuff, I think I'm clearly beginning to see the structure that is me, that I've created. That's the self, and how that's what runs my life. That the now is always being processed by this character, and when I can be aware that that's happening, it takes a different feeling. I can almost laugh at it. I don't know who is laughing at whom, but something is happening there. And for me, I think the thing that really is stunning about this whole thing is to get an understanding of that self that is constantly processing the now is where my problem is.
Right.
Ugo, when you say is constantly processing the now, I think that's a great expression. I just want to make sure that I understand it. So you mean the mind is constantly processing the now in terms of making judgments about it? Is that what you mean?
Engaging the mind is engaging your conditioning. It's engaging, you know, the thing that the thing that I've been creating since I popped out of the womb. But when you pop out of the womb and you're creating this concept of self, or you're creating the self, and then at some point you become aware of it when you're a little bit 2-3 years old. And I've gone through 70 years of life, maybe even a little more, without really understanding that and the consequences of that. You know, when the thinking arises, when I'm talking now, it's not coming from this quietness. It's coming from the ego, which is selecting the words, and those words are conditioned for me to express. Those words just don't come out of anywhere. I've been taught, I've learned how to express them, and that's not necessarily what's happening in the present moment. I'm distorting everything. I'm the psychological aspect, not the knowledge, not the scientific knowledge, math, blah 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 blah, but how I feel, my judgments, my upsets, my sorrow, my feelings. They're absolutely controlled by what I've been exposed to for all of my life. And you know, and you can really see it when you take those walks, and when I can get into that silent period. It's not that I can get an understanding of what's happening. It's that I can more or less appreciate that I still have a sense of being, even though I'm not using the self to define it or to be in that moment. In other words, you're there and there's no thought, there's no anything, yet you're still there.
Yes.
And you know, that more or less reinforces what this whole thing is all about. I mean, this whole exercise for me, this whole non-duality, it can be summed up in one little thing for me. You're not who you think you are.
Right.
And then you get into JK, and who really so beautifully defines it. I mean, I love that man. I mean, it's so, can't understand all of it, but boy, I know what there is to get. He's projecting. If I can only get it. Okay, that's enough. That's enough for me. Like, mute myself out a little bit here.
Well, you know, fundamentally, you cannot be that which you can see, because otherwise you wouldn't see it. So we know that we see our body, so we really fundamentally can't be this body. We see it. We see that it's changed. We see change. We see our thoughts. We see our feelings. We're aware of our senses. So all that is not who we fundamentally are. So then the question is, well, then what am I? What are we? We are that which witnesses, has awareness of all these things. And that's what he was pointing to, that awareness. So he's saying, this me, which is fundamentally made up of all those thoughts, experiences, feelings, to have an awareness of how this me moves in our everyday life. Be a witness to that. Because if we can, and I love how he said, effortlessly, without force, without condemnation, without judgment, just effortlessly, choicelessly, be aware of what's going on psychologically inward, and also being aware of what's going on outside. Because when you're aware of what's going on outside in this world, it's not any different, really, than what's going on inside. So to have a complete awareness of the movement of all that. And he's saying that when we're able to do that, that's meditation. And when we're able to do that choicelessly, the thinking kind of stops, or the thoughts stop. And there's silence, that inner silence. And to the degree to which we're able to be that silence is the degree to which that which is not of time, because the me and thought and experience is of time, right? It's all based on time. It's based on the past moving into the future. It's all based on time. But that which witnesses, that which has choiceless awareness, that is not of time. Right? And that, to the degree to which we can be in that space, opens the possibility for, as he said, for a totally new movement that is not in time and that moves into what he calls the unnameable. Some people could call it the absolute, God consciousness. He refers to it as the unnameable.
You know, it occurs to me that when you're talking about awareness and it being timeless, it has no beginning and it has no end. So, in effect, awareness is always in the now and can't ever be anyplace else.
Correct.
So that is, awareness is the now.
Yes, correct.
And that's when I can really get an understanding of how I get messed up with that, because on the one hand, there is the awareness of really what produces the ability of accumulating or constructing an ego or a self. And yet that self denies the truth of what awareness really is, that it's not the self, it's the awareness. I don't know if I'm making sense out of
Yes,
that.
right.
But,
That's right. And I think what's so important is that Krishnamurti calls it choiceless awareness, because the mind can also be aware of itself.
If you have a choice, you're thinking, and if you're thinking, you're not.
That's right. But when there is choiceless awareness, then there's no thought involved.
It's not from the ego.
Then it's not from the ego.
Mm.
Then it's not from the ego. So, but it's, he said, you lay down this foundation, he said, the foundation of observation, observing the movement of the mind, clarity, really being able to see the what is, not what we want it to be, not what we hope it to be, but the actual having clarity, being able to see the what is. How important that is in everyday life. And how most of the times we're even frightened of seeing the actual what is. But he says in order to have clarity, we've got to be able to see the what is. And not seeking, it's kind of like, I'm going to meditate because I hope I'm going to get something out of it. So, but I don't want to get anything. I don't want anything. I really don't want anything. I just want to be able to choicelessly be aware of what's going on inwardly and outwardly. And no other motive, just having that choiceless awareness in the now moment.
So now that we're hunkered down and not going any place in our lives is kind of shrunk. So if I want to find out what's going on in the world, I sit in front of the television and I watch the news, and the movie unspools, and I watch what's going on in all different places all over the world, and I might comment on it. Oh, that's good. That's terrible. Why do they keep showing that story or this serve? And oh my God, there was an earthquake here, and that's terrible. And then I turn off the TV and I say, now let me find out what's going on with myself. And I try to turn my attention inward and watch the internal movie, right? Now, if I watch the internal movie and I'm still there commenting on, this is interesting, this is bad, that's good, well, I'm still in my ego.
Right.
But if I watch the internal movement and there's no judging, there's no commenting, there's just, as Krishnamurti says, a choiceless awareness of what arises, that's what he's describing as meditation,
Right.
and a pathway to clarity.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. Right.
So in one example, there's a watcher watching the news. And in the other example, the watcher disappears and there's just awareness.
Right. So that's like observation without the observer.
Right.
Just observation without the observer.
Mm-hmm.
Because the observer is the me.
Mm-hmm.
And the me is not capable of clarity. How can the me be capable of clarity? It's so conditioned. So it sees what it wants to see, or what it believes it's seeing, or what it needs to believe. But I think the good news is that this isn't anything that we can't do, right? This is our life, and we're living it anyway, so we might as well have a choiceless awareness of how we're living it. And as he said, to really watch what you do all day. Now, most people, most of us can't help but do what we're doing. Working in a factory or working in a store, or however we're working, or these poor people now that are working so hard, the healthcare workers. But even there, to be fully in the now, which I think most people that have very difficult jobs are kind of forced to be in the now. What we do every day is really vitally important. What we put into our heads. A lot of the garbage that goes on that we take in. So very easily, to meditate That doesn't stop us from meditating the way we want to meditate. If it's 20 minutes here or 30 minutes there. But I think the meditation he's talking about is something we can do all the time, no matter where we are, without any control. Just observing without the observer. So
I just wanted to say that you guys explained it so well tonight. I really, and Hugo too. Like just what was said. It just, I feel like I understood it in a way I hadn't before. It's very simple, and I can do it here and there, but you know, I have to interrupt the hamster wheel. It's not the default. Default is always, you know, in the moment of, you know, the opposite of choiceless. Like, how's this going to serve me? Is this good for me? Is this something I want? I was better last time.
Exactly.
Oh, God, it's like so selfish.
Well, that's part of the conditioning. That's part of the me, always wanting to protect itself.
Right. And then to observe that without judgment.
Yes.
Is really another whole step.
I would say that's most important. I think that's most important, to be able to observe the working of that me without any judgment of oneself. That's really important. That's where true compassion comes in for oneself. To be able to see where this me is going and how it's so centered around itself. But just to see it without any kind of criticism or condemnation or judgment of any kind. That's probably the hardest thing to do, and the most important thing to do.
You know, that's where sometimes they say it's so important to have a benevolent, nurturing parent voice inside your head, in addition to the voice that's usually so critical, so that you can encourage yourself rather than diminish yourself.
Yes. But Paul, I think even that has to be aware. You have to be aware when that arises.
Yeah, but if you're stuck with only a critical parent tape playing inside your head, one step maybe on the way to letting go to all parents is to first go to a nurturing place.
Right.
Yes.
And then eventually you don't need that.
Right. But again, to have a choiceless awareness of that's what's appearing now. You see, it's just an appearance, right? It's just appearing and it's passing away. It's a thought, an image that's appearing in your awareness. It appears and then it passes away. Unless you grab hold of it and dwell.
Right. Or it keeps appearing
over
and over and over.
That's right. But if you're really able, and you are able, to see it as it arises, and see it, and let it go. I love to say, pull the plug on it. It'll come back, so what? Pull the plug on it.
Yeah, it's a habit.
That's right. And we are strongly conditioned. but we can interrupt it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if we were both robots, you know, at some point you could go to one of them and say, oh my, this program is driving me crazy. Unplug me for a few minutes, will you? You know, like you do with the Apple TV or one of those things that doesn't work. Oh, unplug it and then plug it back in. It'll be fine. We've got to unplug.
One of the things I like about the passage you read is that it seems that, I'm not sure this is true from his point of view, but what I got was the impression that he makes a distinction between the mind and the brain.
Well, you know, it's interesting because here, at one point he says, let me see if I can find it. Just a minute. He says the mind and, wait a minute. He says the whole mind in which is included the brain. The whole mind in which is included the brain.
Mm.
So I think that's where generally Krishnamurti comes from. He just sees it as one. What is that?
Well, how did it strike you, Bill?
Well, my experience with meditation, and I've been doing a form of 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. And then during the course of the day, doing moving meditation. And I find that maybe it's just a matter of facility, but I find it's easier for me to observe if I am the one who has the will, the free will to direct my attention. And to me, that is the work of the mind, the conscious mind. But there is an aspect of the intellectual thing that I call the brain that is quite mechanical.
Right.
It's quite mechanical. And it makes no difference to me if it's based on conditioning or what somebody said to me or anything like that. It's mechanical. And that aspect of intellectual activity can dominate during moments of being challenged. And that's when it is most visible to be observed. It's also the moment when observation is the least possible for me. So meditation for me is extremely important, and it helps me to consider the mind as the point of observing the operation of the mechanical brain. And there is a certain amount of judgment that's involved in that, because there are elements of me, like my belief that the ego is real. Okay, and when that expresses itself, it's not a matter of judging it so much as it is of watching and seeing how it works. But I'm not looking at it as a friend. I'm not going to war with it. I'm just looking at it and seeing what the end result is. But on a more practical basis, to the extent that I persevere in maintaining the practice of meditation on a daily basis. I'm pretty lazy sometimes. So I can get well into the afternoon before it occurs to me that I forgot to meditate this morning. And the reason it occurs to me is that I'm having a crappy day. I'm having a lousy day, and that tells me something that is going on that I'm not aware of. And very often I can attribute it to the fact that I did not meditate.
Mm.
And I told myself later, I forgot. I said, the mechanical thing said, oh, I forgot, but I'll make up for it tonight. I'll take care of it tonight.
Mhm.
There is no tonight. There's no making up for it. Either I do it or I don't. And if I do it, the quality of my day is totally different
Mhm.
from a day that I con myself into thinking that I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
There may well be hidden from me a reason why I don't meditate in the morning. And as you say, Evelyn, it could very well be an aspect of my work that I don't want to look at.
Mm.
And I know it's going to be there.
Mhm.
And the fact that I know it's going to be there should actually give me more motivation to go there.
Mhm.
But I want to run away.
Mm.
Right.
But basically speaking, the great benefit to me is that of having a pleasant day, not some mystical dream.
Mhm.
Having a pleasant day and enjoying this 24 hours on the planet and feeling more or less in tune,
Ah.
even with the chaos,
Mhm.
even with the mayhem, without being forced to make those kinds of judgments.
Right.
So if I didn't have that very pleasant feeling during the course of the day, I probably would have quit years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's what keeps me coming back to it.
Right.
Got it.
It's not the magnificent insights, and it's not that it's making me smarter
Okay.
or wiser or anything like that. I just have a nice day.
Good. David, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you for the concept of the choiceless awareness. Choiceless in a couple of senses. One is, I will choose to meditate now, the intentionality of the ego. I choose that, and no, that's not it. And then as I watch the chatter go by, I will choose a particular feeling, a particular thought, a particular memory, a particular sensation. I'll choose to dwell on some intuition, and then to choose that stops the flow. As soon as I grasp any of them, I stop the flow of awareness of the chatter going by. But I have to confess to having a meditation deficiency disorder. I used to meditate every now and then. I miss the regularity dearly. And but I also confess that my awareness and my meditation is as non-judgmental as Nuremberg. Yes, good to see you always.
Yes, David.
Always, David.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Well, hope to see you all next week.
Yes.
Everybody stay
Stay
safe.
healthy. Yes.
Yeah, thank you
Yes.
so
Right.
much.
Thank you
Okay.
all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Buonanotte.
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 Okay.
And meeting.